Good Shabbos, everybody. This Shabbat, in addition to being Shabbat, is also called Shabbat Zachor, which is given to the Shabbat, is the name given to Shabbat before Purim, which begins, as you know, this evening. Now, in the maftir this morning, which was at the second of our two readings, we are told, Zachor, remember, Shasalacha Amalek, with what Amalek did to you on your journey as you left Egypt. You shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under the heaven, and lo tishkach, you shall not forget. So what did Amalek do that was so bad? And we're told that right after the Israelites crossed the Red Sea, Amalek attacked them from the rear. They attacked the weak, they attacked the women, they attacked the children, those who were least likely to be able to defend themselves. So we're told to remember what Amalek did and destroy them and their memory. And while we rightly hurt and we grieve over the loss of innocent life in Israel and in Gaza, that situation again reminds us why we need to zachor, why we need to remember and do away with all those who exist to do evil and harm to others, all others. So how do we do so? It's easy to say, but how do we do it? Well, our Haftarah tells us one such way. It tells us about Shaul, the first king of Israel, who was commanded by God to wipe out Amalek completely. All the people, all the possessions, even the animals, because of their continued assaults and hatred against Israel. But what happened? Well, Saul decided not completely to obey God. He kept the king Agag alive, and he kept all the wealth and possessions of Amalek for himself. And for that, he was stripped of the kingship by God, and through the prophet Samuel, who killed Agag himself. But before Samuel could kill Agag, legend has it that Agag fathered a son to carry on the family line, which continued all the way down through Haman. Yes, wiping out the entire Amalek nation might seem a little extreme and cruel, to say the least. Why kill innocent children? Why kill animals? Isn't it enough that we just win the war? Isn't it enough that we destroy Amalek as a military threat? Isn't it enough that we've looted their possessions? Why is it necessary to kill them all? It seems so unjust. It seems so unfair. And it even offends our sensibilities. These very same thoughts were probably running through Saul's minds as well. And so Saul took matters into his own hands and he disobeyed God. Why? Perhaps because Saul felt pity on a fellow ruler. Perhaps because he didn't want other world leaders or nations condemning his actions. Or perhaps Saul didn't understand the true nature of evil. Saul was sympathetic. And maybe he believed that some people aren't really that bad. They're not really that evil, just a little evil. And maybe he couldn't grasp the concept that there were those who were out to destroy Israel and who were out to destroy the Jews, and there would be no way of changing their minds or their behavior. God punished Saul, as I said, by taking away his kingship from him, from his family, because he wouldn't kill Agag. So why such a heavy punishment? Why couldn't he have just told Agag off and said, listen, you didn't listen to me this time, do it again and you're out? What does all this have to do with Purim? And more to the point, Because as we know, history has a way of repeating itself. So what does any of this have to do with us today? I'll start with Purim. As I mentioned, Haman, the legend has it, was a descendant of King Agag, and thus an Amalekite. It was therefore no wonder that when he would attempt to destroy all the Jews, ultimately he would fail, but he would attempt to do it. Over time and throughout Jewish history, Amalek has become the symbol for the anti-Semites, for all those who kill Jews for no reason other than their hatred of Jews. So why did Haman hate Jews? You can understand Agag had something, but why so many generations did Haman hate Jews? Haman says to Achashverosh, you're going to hear it tonight in the Megillah, Yeshnam am echad mefuzam uforad bein ha'amim. There is a people across your kingdoms that do not obey your laws. They're different from those of any of the other people. It is not in your majesty's interest to tolerate them. Now we know that Achashverosh, or Xerxes I, was a drunken buffoon. He was a buffoon. But listen to what Haman's saying. A certain people, they look different. They act differently. They dress differently. They eat differently. Their laws are different. Does that sound familiar? Because if it doesn't, it should. It's classic anti-Semitism. The Jews are different from everyone else, and therefore they should be killed. It's the same anti-Semitic words that we've heard for thousands of years and that we still hear today. And so on Shabbat Zachor, we remember not just Haman, but all the anti-Semites who came after, all the way down till Hitler, and down even today to those who are out to get us and vow to fight them. And we are told to set this Shabbat aside right before the festivities of Purim to remember Zachor, what Amalek did. It's a reminder to us, not what happens if we disobey or ignore God. Don't think that for 1 second. But rather what happens if we ignore evil, all forms of hatred and anti-Semitism, and fail to act against it. By allowing Agag to live, Saul paved the way for there to be a Haman. And after Haman has come a long line of anti-Semites, including Hadrian, Hitler, Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. And it continues today throughout the world, as we know too well. What do the Hamans of the world have in common? And don't kid yourself. They have a lot in common. They all want to destroy and annihilate the Jews. And so what are we told? We're told, and right in the Megillah tells us, don't hesitate, don't be afraid to exercise self-defense. You're going to read it tonight. Saul had a chance to wipe out Amalek, but in pity, he spared Agag. Centuries later, Haman, the descendant of Agag, plotted a mass extermination of Jews. And as the Talmud says, whoever is compassionate to those who deserve cruelty ends up being cruel to those who deserve compassion. This Shabbat reminds us each year as we experience increasing anti-Semitism that we can never forget, that we must always remember what the stakes are and what can happen if we let evil win. Remember, you know, this past week, we had this beautiful event here on Sunday night. There was a lot of pushback. A lot of pushback internally here. People didn't want the event to take place for all sorts of reasons. One particular reason was because, we're going to become a target. They're going to hit us. They're going to come. Did they come? Sure they came. Sure they came. But you know what? We stood firm. We didn't give in. We didn't cower. We had our program. Thanks to the resources that were at our disposal. We must never give in. We must remember that what starts with mere words, if not stamped out immediately, will soon escalate into something far worse than words. Before Purim starts, before we eat hamantaschen and enjoy and then celebrate our survival, we pause to remember what Amalek did to the Israelites when they left Egypt and what they have tried to do ever since. We are reminded that enemies like that will always exist. You can never wipe them out. Somebody said to me last week, they're like the mold on the bathroom tile. However much you wipe it off, it seems to grow back after a while. We are reminded that enemies like that will always be there. And that is why they must be defeated. Otherwise, they will come back in the form of Haman and try to annihilate us once again. And unless we are aware of this, unless we do something to fight evil and anti-Semitism, we will live to repeat this cycle of events over and over again. So what can we do? What can we do? I want to share with you this little story from Sarah Tuttle. Sarah Tuttle, singer who was of the times of Israel, and she writes the following comments, and it's called "Hide Your Jewish Star." She writes, "My homeroom teacher whispered to me on the first day of the 9th grade. What? I asked her. Don't let them see it. She reached for the silver star dangling in the soft spot at the base of my neck. I'm Jewish too, she whispered, in an accent repping of the shtetl. It is not safe to let them see you. Them, she said? Oh, you mean the 9th graders? Them? The guy with the pink hair and the earring slouched in the corner? The girl who wore silver star stickers over her pimples? Them? The girl with the dreadlocks and hemp necklace? The boy with the glasses? Two feelings ran through me at that moment. Chill. This is LA. They play the Hanukkah song on the radio and half of the school is MIA during the high holidays. Oh my God, what a life she must have had to make for herself, afraid, even now, even years later after moving to America. But that was the beginning of a journey for me, she writes. A journey where I became that kind of Jew. I'd wear a chai in gold, or a Magen David in silver, depending on my eye makeup. I had an Israel Defense Forces t-shirt, olive, and a Coca-Cola in Hebrew t-shirt in blazoned red. But the thing is, even in LA, where you can float down Fairfax Boulevard in a sea of yarmulkes, where I swear to you I once heard a guy wearing a big old diamond cross around his neck tell his son to stop kvetching and schlepping, where they sell Hanukkah gelt at the checkout at Rite Aid. I know that the tides are shifting, and the old nasty anti-Semitism scourge of the earth is eking out into the waters, contagious and vile. From whispered little cruelties to tirades on Fox News to signs on freeway overpasses to outright mayhem and murder to actual violence against Jewish people. It's there and it's real. Check the Times of Israel if you don't believe me. But am I scared? No way. Angry? Hell yeah. But I'm not scared, and nobody is going to make me change the way I live. We are strong. Sure, there are a lot of people who want to wipe us off the map. That is never going to happen. Want to know why? Because we got this. Moshe has left the ghetto. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't live in those ghettos anymore. And the day that we start hiding our identity is the day that we begin to believe that we are returning to the ghettos and have something to apologize for. It's a lot to take on, I know. It's a heavy weight to carry, sure. But I would rather shoulder this burden with pride and rock my Jewish star than tuck it back in beneath my shirt with tears in my eyes. We have a chance to be the change that we want to see in the world by meeting others who have no idea who we are or what we are about. And if we go out and about into the world with our shoulders back and with a smile on our face and in our eyes, then maybe they'll see us for who we really are. People, humans, wonderful, proud, open, caring, insistently thriving people who grew from the roots of a deep and storied history. And if not, their loss, and to hell with them. Because we aren't going anywhere. And we won't hide, and we will shine on, Jewish and proud. You can look it up on the Times of Israel. Great article. And God did for Mordechai and Esther. We will read tonight. May he give us the strength to deal with evil, with conviction and courage. So in the future, Shabbat Zachor is only about remembering the past and no longer about existing threats to our survival today. Shabbat Shalom.